Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about where we currently sit from my point of view with AMC stock. It's been a long battle. It's been up, it's been down. Hedge funds continuously short the stock. But what am I most excited about looking ahead into the future? What do I think could rally the stock? And ultimately, when do I think the Moass could happen, and where potentially we could go as far as the actual price of the stock, guys? So without any further ado, let's get into it. And the first thing I want to start with is exactly what is happening today and kind of what's going to happen over the next couple of days. Take a real near-term perspective on this, and then we will look further out on what do I expect over the next couple of months. So what's happening today is obviously digestion from the Fed. Yesterday, markets are down today, some stocks down more than others, and we're really heading into earnings. Here in after hours, you have PayPal, Coinbase, Block, Mercado Libre, Warner Brothers Discovery, Twilio, Starbucks, Carvana, Cloudflare, and STEM Energy Superintelligence. So you have some notable names that will be reporting earnings right about now. And those can move their own certain sectors. A lot of your fintechs will be reporting earnings here in after hours, and fintechs can help drive the markets one way or the other. So over the near term, you want to watch that as far as the economic data as well. Those are going to be the major things that will move the markets. And tomorrow is all about the jobs report, and I believe it comes out at 8:30 in the morning. Let's go ahead and look exactly what time. Yes, 8:30 in the morning. You have the non-farm payrolls for October, and you have the unemployment rate for October as well. We are expecting an unemployment rate to tick up from 3.5% last month to 3.6% this month. You are also expecting non-farm payrolls to go from 263,000 last month to 200,000 this month. And the way the jobs reports have really been coming out, last month was a big drop, and that was better than expected. But most of the time we beat to the upside. So if we beat to the upside and there is more jobs that were created, that's going to be a very negative thing for the short term. If there's less than 200,000 jobs that were created, which I imagine it's probably going to come in less than 200,000, then that is going to be a very positive thing, because the Fed basically put 50 or 75 basis points for the December meeting up in the air. So right now, where we currently sit is about 52.8% of market participants are expecting a 75 basis point rate hike in December. These odds did flip from yesterday. We were only at a 38.5% chance of a 75 basis point rate hike and a 61.5% chance of a 50 basis point rate hike. Now we sit at a 47.2% chance of a 50 basis point rate hike. So believe it or not, the markets, and specifically the Fed, they price things in, right? I'm sure you guys already know this. And if you look at the Fed rate monitor tool, you can actively know what the Fed is going to do, because the Fed always does what the markets are pricing in. If the markets are giving the Fed more room to raise rates more aggressively, that's what they're going to do. Just like back in Jackson Hole, back in August, when the markets were sitting at 430 on the S&P 500 and we got that monstrous rally from the lows, that was basically confirmation to the Fed that they could raise rates more aggressively, and that's exactly what they did. So whatever has the highest probability heading into December 14th, that's what we are going to get. Now, I will say it does possibly open the door to more optimism coming over the next couple of days. If the jobs report is good, that will push up the probability of a 50 basis point rate hike, and that will be a very positive thing for the markets. And that's really over the near term. Now let's talk about AMC GME, another possible short squeeze, because if you look up, just Google AMC stock short squeeze or GME stock short squeeze, you're going to see article after article talking about the potential for another round of meme stock craze. And a lot of this has to do with a lot of built up momentum or potentially momentum under the surface with retail investors, even with hedge funds. Everyone wants a return somewhere. The only returns this year really at all have been in healthcare, energy, or shorting stocks. Shorting stocks, shorting bonds. That has really been the way to make a return. If you're not a short hedge fund, some hedge funds don't even have the ability to short stocks or to do certain things in certain markets. All depends on how they are regulated, but some firms can even short stocks. So some firms are solely at the mercy of what the markets do. For an example, Cathie Woods, they are an ETF. They cannot short stocks, right? So that opens the door if you do get a runner or there's a reason for a stock to go up to short squeeze that has a high short interest like AMC or GME, you can see a lot of momentum and upside pressure from retail, from hedge funds, from institutions, from large individual investors. I think there's a lot of money waiting on the sidelines to see what will happen next with these companies. So I think you're really at a moment where, the fire is set. It's ready to be lit. But we need a reason for it to be lit, because it's been a while since we've seen just good news in general to rally either one of these stocks. It's been a long time. I can't even think of the last thing that was positive that rallied AMC or GME that was actually fundamentally positive. Now, on the near-term horizon, we have earnings coming for AMC. That will be next week. Let's go ahead and see exactly. I believe it's November 8th is going to be earnings for AMC, and that could be important if there is something that is positive in that earnings report. Now, I will say the expectations are pretty low for AMC overall. If they miss, it could be bad. If they beat, it'll be very, very positive. And considering you have a 20% short interest still on the stock, that could make for a very volatile move to the upside. But when I look further out, for one, I don't see a big market turnaround. So I don't think hedge funds are going to be in a better position months down the line than where we are right now. I don't think that will be the case. So with that being said, when you look out to the next earnings report, like I talked about in the last video, there's a lot of blockbuster movies that will be heading to movie theaters, like Avatar in December, like the new Black Panther coming in just the next 2 weeks, that will be reported on this next earnings that I think will be a very positive thing. And I think AMC can show a very solid net profit. And I think that's what the stock really needs right now, is to actually show a net profit. If that happens, the stock will see a massive influx of capital, given the valuation is so low. And, until we get a positive light, of some form or the other, whether it's earnings, whether it is a new accusation or paying down debt or something, I don't think the stock is going to do all too much. But when it does, I think it's going to be very, very volatile. And I think at the very latest, it's going to be the next earnings, if it's not this upcoming earnings that we will get next week. It's very possible that AMC surprises us with something. They typically always do, and that is unforecastable. But my realistic expectation is for next earnings to be absolutely stellar, and for the markets to be at a lower place by then, and hedge funds to be in a worse overall position, because when hedge funds have to, put up collateral for a short position, they put up stock and they put up the current market value of stock. But what has happened over the last year, because the markets have been so volatile, is that let's say you got $1 billion margin call with JP Morgan. Let's say you have $1 billion of Google stock. Well, have you seen what Google stock has been doing lately? It's been going straight down. So JP Morgan says, yeah, we're going to need $1 billion worth of stock or $1 billion in cash. But if you're using stock, we're going to have to discount 20% of that, because we don't know what could happen to the stock next week or next month. So that means you have to put up more collateral. If the stock you are holding for collateral, in this case Google, continues to go down, you have to continue to put more collateral in until you get to a point where you either AMC went up too much and you're forced to cover, or you don't have any money or collateral left to put up for that position. And I think that is potentially what we're heading into over the near-term horizon if the markets continue to decline. And that's really what I'm expecting to happen, right? It's clear the Fed's not going to pivot anytime soon. They're not going to slow down unless we get some really good data. Then the markets are probably not going to rally all too high, not going to help the hedge funds out really in that regard at all. Now, as far as the short interest currently at the time of recording this video, it's sitting at 20% with AMC, 103 million shares that are sold short. And if we look at the days to cover, that is sitting at 4.72. So it would be very hard for shorts to get out of their short positions in a timely manner if they needed to. You're also seeing the shares out on loan at 178 million. There's only 103 million shares sold short. So there is a lot of shares out on loan still that could still be sold short, or they have already been sold short over the past couple of weeks, but that has not been reported to us yet. So either way it goes, there's potentially a lot more short interest that we could actually prove on the stock. That is let alone the options that have been creating all of that synthetic shorting activity on AMC stock. Nonetheless, the free flow out on loan sitting at about 34.5% with a 100% share utilization. And you can also see the cost to borrow numbers are very high still as well, sitting at 22.65% for the cost to borrow max, and the cost to borrow average sitting at 18.32%. Currently, the stock is down about 1.72% here on the day. And if we look at something else that caught my eye as well, is that some hedge funds are turning towards essentially credit markets, essentially bad credit markets heading into next year. And why that's key is that if hedge funds are investing in bad credit, that means that they cannot use bad credit as collateral towards their loans, for one, but also if they're investing in bad credit, that means it's hard to actually gain a respectable return in this market, especially if you cannot short stocks. And if you're going to the high credit markets, you're going to, buy bonds in bad companies that have a very high potential to go bankrupt. And I can't find the article right now, but it was saying like a 50% year over year jump from 2021 into 2022 of investors, hedge funds, like high net worth and individuals buying these essentially bonds that are 10% plus interest rates with a high probability of defaulting. That is going to create a whole new problem if you start to get a credit crisis in 2022, the rest of this year and 2023. That's also not going to be a very positive thing for hedge funds. Their loss is our gain, ladies and gentlemen. So that is pretty much going to do it for this video. As far as how high I think AMC stock could go, if we do get the perfect conditions, if we get hedge funds that get squeezed out of their positions, keep in mind, the short interest only went from, the 20% range down to 14% during this rally in June. If you get hedge funds that are forced to cover because liquidity is just drying up, I think you could go much higher than the levels that we've seen in June. With the adjusted split price, it says $44.61 was the peak that we did hit. I think you could easily top over $100 in this new marketplace, and that's just putting a wild guess on it. I think that would be a very good starting point. We could talk about going higher than that once we get to that, right? Once we actually start to see a rally coming. But I do still have high hopes and high ambitions for AMC stock. Let me know down below, what is your price targets for AMC? What do you think is going to happen? When do you think the Moass is going to happen? Let me know all of that information down below in the comment section. If you guys want access to all of my trades in real time, link down below in the description of this video as well. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.